about ready to get going here. Doing a little before the stream meltdown, as it were. Juggling two open windows, show notes, and at least one of my windows has 30 tabs open. So yeah, I'm just checking out my computer to see how much I'm killing my computer here. As I bring down the music, as I'm close to starting, I do believe. Let's see. Double checking this, double checking that. Right off the bat, I want to thank you all for joining me, whether live, lurking, or you're going to catch it in a replay. Thank you all for joining me on a beautiful Saturday afternoon. Hopefully it's beautiful where you are. It's really nice where I am. Let me see. Right off the bat, I have Tina, the Naughty Dragon. Hello there. Good to see you in chat today. Happy Saturday, everyone. Let's see. I like the background music. I don't know if I want to let that keep going or just let it fade on out because I'm close to getting going here. I'll just bring it down a bit. There we go. I'll go ahead and kill it. Okay, I do believe I'm about as ready as I'm going to get. Let me check the time here. A hair past 2 o'clock my time. Well, 2:08. I'm getting better at actually starting on time. My Saturday afternoon stream is what I kind of put or reserve for comic books and all things comic book related, whether it's news, movie news, TV show news. Most time it's just loose comic books I've enjoyed over the years and like to share and chat about. For today's show, you can guess by the thumbnail, I've got a very odd 4-issue miniseries from Marvel's, what is this? They call it the Epic Comics. It's kind of like a Marvel imprint, I'm guessing. Well, they kind of had more creator-owned works and the Marvel Epic Comics imprint. This go around have Havok and Wolverine Meltdown. Let me go ahead and let's see, where is my... Oh, there it is. As I bring this up here, there we go. Get my webcam fired up here. We have Havok and Wolverine Meltdown 1, 2, 3. Then the story concludes in issue 4. These are pretty nice books, pretty thick. Not hefty graphic novels, but they're much thicker than your average comic book. Pretty neat little standalone story involving the mutants, X-Men, Wolverine, and Havok. Let me pop this right open so we can see who did what here. Walter and Louise Simonson handled the writing chores. Now we have 2 different artists here handling the artwork. We have John J. Muth and Kent Williams. However, it appears that they did not, cooperate. Well, they cooperated, but they handled the artwork in a very different fashion. You had artist Muth handling the Havok character, and then Kent Williams did all the Wolverine art. So you have something in these books that is very odd. Even to this day, it's kind of divisive, I would say. It's very odd looking art. It's painted artwork, as I get into some of it here. So it has this very odd feel to it. I'll just show off some of the artwork before I get into the story here. So yeah, it took a while for me to get used to the artwork. It didn't quite jive, but then it did after a while seem kind of to work out how they kind of meshed together. It's very odd. All painted artwork. Don't know who handled the covers. I was trying to find that information out and didn't quite get it all. At some place, I want to say There was a third artist who handled some of the artwork besides the two main ones who handled separated the chore artwork between Havok and Wolverine. So now to dig into the interesting story here, we have characters Havok and Wolverine on what could essentially be, well, what Wolverine calls a vacation. The pair are in good old Mexico, partying, drinking. Well, Wolverine enjoys himself getting into fights and dive bars, but that's what Wolverine does. Havok just kind of sits back and watches Wolverine tear apart bar after bar, apparently. Now, it's very odd because in the first book, we start off with this kind of flashback to Chernobyl, as we have it's essentially a exposition dump, as you have scientist characters talk about the Chernobyl reactor and stuff, and it goes in the Meltdown. Then you have the villains of the book talking about their plans for world domination. The two villains are the characters' names are Dr. Neutron and Meltdown. Dr. Neutron comes across as a old mad scientist type bent on world domination. Meltdown is the mutant muscle behind their world domination scheme. And apparently, as the story goes along, we find out that Meltdown has the mutant ability of absorbing radiation or plasma energy and getting extremely more powerful and whatnot himself, and able to rechannel that radiation into blasts, I guess, or radioactive blasts, which becomes pretty apparent as it moves along, because we have a reason for Havok to be in there. We have a reason for Wolverine. It's actually a nice little story how they handled the pair of main characters and how the characters went throughout the story. Let's see. Let me get into the artwork here. That was a setup. That was a setup for the story itself. Like, what's going on? We find our heroes at a Mexican bar. Traditional bar fight. Chairs cracking, fist flying, bottles flying, and we have Havok just calmly sitting at the bar, reading a newspaper, enjoying his drink. And Wolverine is enjoying the bar fight. So right off the bat, this is very odd artwork. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this characterization of Wolverine. We have competing artist styles here. We have one artist handling Havok, and then another artist handling the Wolverine for when the artwork when Wolverine's on the scene. They get into a bar fight. Of course, the bar denizens come back to their hotel room, decide the fight wasn't over with. They flee. They steal a car. The apparent owner of the car is like standing by the road going, hey, you just stole my car. So, of course, they back up, grab the woman, take off. The artwork, like I said, is odd. I can't really think of another way to describe it, because at some points, Havok is very reminiscent of, say, James Dean. And there are points where I look at Wolverine and I start thinking John Cusack for some reason. So I don't know what the artist's intentions were when they were drawing up the designing the characters and whatnot. I don't know what they had in mind. So of course, some very strange characters show up, stop them in their tracks. Havok lets loose with a plasma blast, starts getting rid of the other characters. The woman they picked up turns out to be what was it? A femme fatale type Soviet agent. This is all part of a trap to capture Havok, but essentially Wolverine as well as the story moves along. We'll get Wolverine waking up in a hospital environment, digging a bullet out of his arm, realize it's a bubonic plague type bullet. It doesn't kill him, of course, it just weakens him. The hospital staff tell him that his friend died from the bubonic plague. So, of course, he's skeptical and decides to visit the grave where they've already buried Havok. Wolverine's not having any of it, so he digs up the grave and finds a bag of rocks, essentially, and says, well, this ain't him. But take a look at this picture of Wolverine. This is very odd. This is about an odd a take on Wolverine as I can think of. After a while, it did start to grow on me, and I kind of did like this approach to Wolverine. It makes him look more feral, more animalistic. But as the story progresses, we see Wolverine actually do some pretty intelligent things. So at this point, they are attacked, kidnapped, drugged, or attempted. In Wolverine's case, they attempted to kill him, but of course, didn't work on Wolverine. They eventually get to the point where Wolverine starts tracking down Havok to try to figure out what happened to him. Which leads into issue 2 here. Let's see. As again, I check out who did what, because I want to say there might have been a third artist here handling some of the artwork, but they just don't list it, because I feel like all this whatever this is like 10 pages of exposition setting up the story, where the mad scientist character is talking to his accomplice what's going on and what Chernobyl was about, and it's like, oh yeah, we got to stop Glasnost because we don't want to lose the old ways of the old Soviet Union before things change. We want things to stay the way they were. That's pretty much the villain's motive to it. So that's a setup for issue 1. Issues 2. Yes. Tina saying, sometimes I feel like they stray too far from the character designs between comic book stories. Yeah, depending on which artist is tackling the artwork. That's what I was saying about this book. It's kind of odd because you have 2 artists, 2 painters handling the artwork, and it's kind of nice. It's got an odd feel to it. It's interesting. Oh, Wolverine issue 2 starts off with Wolverine once again in a bar fight, or fighting a group of people trying to find information on where Havok is, where his friend is. It's a particularly brutal fight. And then we get Havok waking up in a hospital saying, oh, you've been attacked, and we've rescued you, but however, your friend is dead. So they give Havok the same story they gave Wolverine. Oh, lemon pie. Hello there. Howdy, just popping by, but not for too long. Well, that's cool. Thanks for hanging out ever how long you can. Very cool. So just checking out the back cover design. So yeah, Havok also wakes up in the hospital room where we meet the same person that ended up kidnapping them outside their hotel. Here's a shot of Meltdown, the Soviet mutant henchman to Dr. Neutron. They're in apparently some kind of Soviet asylum someplace where Dr. Neutron was hatching his scheme for world domination, and Meltdown was there to assist him because Meltdown has the ability to absorb radiation and channel it into, I guess, blasts or whatever. So yeah, painted artwork, but by two different artists. So we have a very odd look and feel between when one artist is handling artist duties and then the other artist is handling things. And at some point, their styles kind of mesh, and sometimes their styles are kind of competing. And like I said, Havok is channeling James Dean throughout this book, and there are frames where Wolverine reminds me of John Cusack for some strange reason. Of course, they give Havok the same story that, we rescued you, but you guys were attacked and your friend is dead, and Havok's not having any of it. It's like, no, that's not possible. Bubonic plague wouldn't be enough to kill Wolverine. We go along and we get into a point where the Soviet agents or whoever is working with Dr. Neutron, they kind of mind wash Havok, do a number on him, getting him to think that he can, the fight scenes are particularly brutal. But I do like this interpretation of a really no nonsense Wolverine. Like one moment he's stabbing somebody, holding somebody up, and then he retracts the claws. Thud. That's a pretty good characterization of Wolverine. So Wolverine continues tracking Havok and the femme fatale character, who I believe is like a Soviet double agent or something like that. Wolverine at this point falls into a trap as he's chasing Havok, or using his heightened senses to track Havok's scent to another hotel or someplace where they essentially blow it up. Again, thinking that they've killed Wolverine, but no. Bubonic plague and then a building blowing up is not going to be enough to stop Wolverine. By issue 3, it continues on as Havok and the other character go along. We get Wolverine suiting up in his classic yellow and brown costume. So they go from Mexico to Russia. And then by the story's end, they make their way to a nuclear power plant in India. So they do a bit of world hopping from country to country. Again, I'm not entirely sure I like this artwork. I feel like the artist handling Wolverine wasn't quite sure what to do with him or how to portray him. We've got the villain, Meltdown, with a classic square jaw appearance. Yeah, right there. Classic square jaw appearance. They go on and on. They've got Havok pretty much under mind control right now. We've got some racy scenes in here, which when this book came out, it was kind of racy. By today's standards, it's tame. We have Havok kind of falling for the femme fatale character that kidnapped them, tried to kill them both. Well, tried to kill Wolverine, but they need Havok for a reason. So here's the one scene that made me think of John Cusack. It's kind of odd how the art style is all over the place. And again, they plant a trap for Wolverine where they capture Wolverine and end up putting him through the same mind washing technique they put on Havok. But with Wolverine, they realized that, well, 14 bullets of bubonic plague weren't enough to kill Wolverine. A burning building wasn't enough to kill him. So we can go all out on our brainwashing techniques on him and see if he can take it or not. It pretty much makes Wolverine berserk, because by the time he does catch up to Havok, Wolverine has completely lost it. And the two fight. And then we get to a point where, to stop Wolverine, Havok has let loose on one of his plasma blasts. But along the way, we see Havok kind of using some, I forget what they described it, some kind of mental telepathic protection that Xavier gave him prior to these events that kind of helped thwart any mind control or brainwashing that Havok might encounter. Let's see. Tina says, I don't mind Wolverine, but I'm not into superheroes. They are a little too OP. I feel they're not exciting because, yeah, there's no real threat to them. Yeah, over the past 20, 30 years, we have seen more and more superheroes become overpowered. Particularly heroes like Superman. And there was a period of time I was keeping up with Superman in the early 90s, and I stopped reading the books. Got out of comic books for a spell. And then I try to get back into Superman, and it's like I start reading about Superman, and I read about, his new ability and his new powers, and I start thinking, are you kidding me? Superman is Superman. He's already pretty powerful. Now you're talking about super abilities for Superman, or abilities that are new to him. I mean, how much stronger are you going to make Superman? For a while, I felt Wolverine was kind of like that, but Wolverine does have his weaknesses. He does have some flaws to his character, which does kind of help keep his character somewhat interesting. All right, so by the start of the 4th issue here, we have Havok blasting Wolverine, leaving him for dead, or what he thinks he might be dead. But of course, we got some character development. We got some exposition here about what the villains are doing. Once again, we have Wolverine regenerating, waking up, digging himself out of a shallow grave. Coming to his senses at this point after his healing factor kind of undid the brainwashing and whatnot, realizing that he has Havok's coat on him, and he finds a clue as to where they're going and the pocket of the coat. At this point, Havok is in India, where they take him, where they kind of lead him, or the villains kind of lead him through a series of events to a nuclear reactor that's threatening meltdown in India. And of course, Havok does his thing by absorbing the radiation to kind of help prevent the reactor from melting down. And then the big bad shows up. Meltdown actually shows up. He taunts Havok like, yeah, I'm doing all this. I did all this. And I did everything else to manipulate you guys here. So Havok lets loose and sends a blast of plasma to Meltdown. Unfortunately, Meltdown says, this is exactly what I need to power up. You just keep absorbing radiation, and I'll absorb the plasma blast from you and power up to my full potential, because that is their plan. Their plan is to get Havok to absorb boatloads of radiation and then channel it back to Meltdown, so Meltdown can become super powerful so they can achieve world domination. And then he goes as far as killing the femme fatale character that Havok had started falling for. And that really kicks Havok over the edge. Havok lets loose. Oh, that's a nice panel. And he goes, at last. The one thing they weren't counting on was Wolverine showing up, because they all look at Wolverine thinking, like, didn't we kill you? You're supposed to be dead here. Now, Wolverine starts getting into it, has his arm vaporized, and then he gets the clever idea of throwing reactor control rods at Meltdown and impaling him with the reactor control rods as Havok continues absorbing radiation. And he just starts pin cushioning Meltdown with all the control rods to a point where Meltdown says, I'm no longer absorbing energy from Havok. And they end the threat. The threat of Meltdown, anyway. At this point, we see Havok nearing critical himself, and he has to release all the energy he's absorbed, and he kind of shoots it off into space, which is pretty impressive. Then, of course, the heroes save the day. They save India from becoming a nuclear wasteland. They stop the reactor from melting down, and they go back to, I guess after they recover, they go back to some town, some bar to recoup. The ending scenes, we see the mad scientist type, Dr. Neutron, put all the pieces of his toy set away, his toy chess set that he was kind of playing chess with, thinking he was the mastermind behind the scheme and trying to manipulate everything to his will. So all in all, this was not a bad story. The part I kind of had problems with was, well, aside from the art, the story started strong in issue 1. Then between issue 2 and issue 3, it kind of lagged a bit. We had a fair bit of exposition, which I think could have been trimmed down from, like, I don't know, what is it, 12, 14 pages of exposition. That could have been probably trimmed down to, like, I don't know, 6 pages, 8 pages. The story kind of lags in the middle, but then picks up again toward the end. The artwork could be off-putting to some. Depends on if you like artists John Muth and Kent Williams. If you like their art style, I believe they were the in-house artists for Epic Comics. I tried reading up a little bit about Epic because I believe the best story Epic Comics had was an Elektra graphic novel or Elektra storyline. I don't believe I have that one. I'm gonna have to look up that for a future live stream. But yeah, Wolverine Havoc, pretty nice miniseries. Kind of a side adventure when they're not off doing their normal superhero stuff with the X-Men. Now, does it work in this story? Yeah, you kind of get a buddy road trip feel to it as they go off into good old Mexico for a vacation and then find themselves wrapped up in a criminal mastermind, mad scientist scheme to take over the world. Like they hop from Mexico to the Soviet Union, back to India, and they probably head back to Mexico to continue their binge drinking weekend. I don't know. But from there, it's not a bad story. It's kind of entertaining. The hardest parts for me was probably the inconsistent art style. The art style, like I said, was pretty inconsistent, almost to the point of the artist's style being at odds. And then on some pages, things kind of meshed. It's kind of oddly paced. Also, the story is kind of oddly paced because you had a good, strong beginning. It kind of slows down in the middle. Then you had a pretty good ending, a nice, satisfying ending to the books. Yeah, Tina says, not a fan of the cover artwork for that miniseries. Yeah, it's very strange. Like I said, you could almost say this art style is an acquired taste. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like I said, when we were first introduced in issue 1 to Havok and Wolverine at the Mexican bar, it's like Wolverine is looking quite feral, quite animalistic, and Havok is channeling James Dean. So yeah, this artwork is all over the place. But for me, I found it kind of interesting. This is a different take on Wolverine. I kind of felt like the artist didn't quite know what to do with Wolverine's hair or Wolverine's general build. Because here, Wolverine is not a muscled like he's been portrayed in numerous other comic books. Wolverine is kind of a barrel-chested strongman type. Kind of odd. The kind of strong man you'd find at a carnival or circus. That kind of stature. Just kind of an odd take for Wolverine. But here it kind of works. Because you do get the massive, oversized forearms. You get some muscle detail there, some definition. But yeah, it's interesting. All in all, I'd say this is not a bad story to dig into. I kind of glossed over it. Kind of interesting. Worth reading once, maybe twice. If you can find them at a good price, I'd say they're worth collecting. Especially if you like Epic Comics. I think Epic was around from the early 80s to the 90s, early mid 90s perhaps. And they did prestige books similar to this. If I remember right, I want to say they're in-house artists or Muth and Williams. I was kind of reading up on them, but let me see if I can't find which tab did I have it in. So I was pulling up stuff on Wolverine and Havok, and then I was pulling up stuff on Epic Comics. Okay, I'm looking at an article from AIPTcomics.com from 2019. This guy is saying Epic Comics imprint, it was from 1982, goes to the 90s. As this writer, this one article on AIPTcomics.com says, it began wildly ahead of its time with creator-owned work, but would slip into edgier stuff with traditional Marvel characters. Again, perhaps a prescient predecessor to the grim, dark period that would immediately follow. So yeah, this edgier from this article. This one writer saying, "Oh, it's edgy." I'm like, okay, yeah, you could kind of say edgy. I think there might have been depictions of drinking, killing, bar fighting, the femme fatale. Oddly, by today's standards, it's kind of tame. So I'll go ahead and take these and slip them into some nice new Mylar bags and acid-free boards. There we go. Nice and shiny. I like how Mylar just makes everything look better. Lemon Pie agreeing with Tina about OP heroes. No stakes. Yeah. With some heroes, when they get too overpowered, there's no stakes involved. We know they're going to win and come out on top. Let's see. It's like Superman, where they add the power where Superman can discharge all his energy stored. And yeah, that's when I read up on that. That's the one that surprised me. It's like, really, you've given Superman energy blast ability. It's like, I imagine they were influenced by the anime Dragon Ball Z, where they saw the anime characters like Goku and Vegeta and all them firing energy blasts. And somebody said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if Superman had that ability? Wouldn't it be neat if we had Superman have a energy blast ability like Goku from Dragon Ball Z? Yeah, that's once I read that, I was like, oh, come on. You've taken one of the strongest characters with a few weaknesses in DC's roster, and you made him even more powerful with super energy abilities. That's kind of where I kind of just started losing interest in Superman. Superman as a character, anyway. It's like, at that point, I started wondering, well, if they gave Superman energy blast ability and all that, is he still susceptible to kryptonite? Is he still susceptible to magic-based attacks? But then Superman's never been really one of my favorite comic book characters. Let me see. Been going on for almost 45 minutes today. I want to thank you all again for joining me today. Reaching for the graphic novel of the week. The last thing I'm going to share with everyone. I may not do this every week, but I thought about doing a graphic novel of the week to end my live streams with. This is not particularly a graphic novel. This is an art book. This is Doctor Who, Blacklight, the art of Andrew Skelter. Let's see. Reading from the back, Andrew Skelter's Doctor Who work spans more than 15 years. This is a collection of the finest of his paintings, including both the best-known images and some works never previously reproduced with explanatory text by the artist. So this looks pretty neat. I bought this ages ago. More than a decade, probably less than 2 decades. I don't know. Even further back than that. Tina saying, I like Superman when he's like the Christopher Reeve Superman, big blue Boy Scout. Yeah, that's a classic Superman. That's a Superman I think a lot of us grew up on, can really appreciate. So I will not show off every page of this book. I'm just going to flip through it. I was trying to look for like a copy date notice. First published in 1995. Very nice. We got a nice slip cover. Nice hardbound design. If you're a Doctor Who fan, you may or may not have this already in your personal collection, your personal library. Just going to flip through here to show off some of his artwork. Oh, we have Tom Baker. That era, The Master. Peter Davison's Doctor. Oh, look at this. All right. The first Doctor, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and then the sixth. Let's see. Of course, Tom Baker was my Doctor. That's the generation I was in. And then after Tom Baker, of course, Peter Davison got into his run a little bit. He was not a bad Doctor, but seriously, when you're following Tom Baker, that's a hard act to follow. Oh, look at that. That is a good painting of the Master. That's very nice. One of the Doctor's greatest villains. Cybermen, the 5 Doctors. There was one shot I really liked in here. Get some of his early work. Oh, look at that. This is it. I like this one in particular right here. I was like, yeah, he's evil as all get out. But seriously, the Master was a snazzy dresser. I'm going to get some of his later works. Santarans. Yeah. That's it right there. I'm going to end today's live stream. This is going to be a short show today. I didn't think I'd go for 2 hours like I sometimes do on Comic Book Saturdays, but it's been kind of a light subject dealing with just 4 issues of Wolverine, Havok, Meltdown, and then Doctor Who Black Light. Let me check out the chat and see what everybody's talking about. Let's see. Cool. Doctor Who. Yes. Enjoy the rest of the stream. Oh, you got to split. Oh, that's cool. See ya, Lemon Pie. Have a great rest of the day. Let's see. Tina saying Paul McGann was my first doctor, but I was shown the early doctors. Yeah. Tom Baker was it. Tom Baker just became an instant fan favorite for so many reasons. What he brought to the role, his take on the character, he was just a hard act to follow. Of course, I've seen some John Pertwee era episodes, and I quite like John Pertwee, the third Doctor. And then what was his name? Troughton, the second one. I've seen a little bit of his, but not much. I've seen a little bit of the very first Doctor, but again, not much. It's going to be one of those things where I keep telling myself one day I will sit down and just start with the first Doctor, then go to the second one, the third one, so on, so on. I might even finish off the Peter Davison run because I have yet to do that. I certainly didn't get into, what was his name, Colin Baker's run. I missed that completely. Yeah, ultimately, these are not bad. These are actually, yeah, I'm going to say it. These are 2 recommendations. I'm kind of on the fence about the artwork on this, but I did like the story. It was a nice, compact little side story. I kind of enjoyed that. And of course, if you're a Doctor Who fan, you're going to have like a home bookshelf full of DVDs, books, novels, art books. So yeah, this is pretty nice. This would be a nice addition to anyone's Doctor Who home collection. As it's getting the glare from my studio lights. I know. I'll take something and prop underneath so it's not glaring. There we go. Perfect use for these baby set of miniature sports cards. Like, I don't know anything about them, but they are pretty nice for propping open a book cover so it doesn't get glare from my studio lighting. Let's see. Before I close out today, I want to thank you all again for joining me, whether you're live, lurking, or catch it on a replay. Let's see. First out of the gate, Tina, the Naughty Dragon. Hello there. Then Lemon Pie. Howdy, just popped by, but not for long. That's cool. Then we got into a discussion about superheroes being overpowered. Then some Doctor Who. Very cool. Let's see. I'll go ahead and do that right there. And then do this. There we go. Or maybe I'll do that right there. That looks nice. Let's see. I was trying to stretch it out to an hour, just to have an even hour long broadcast, but I have run out of steam for today. Very entertaining show. Cool. Thank you for saying so. Yeah, let's see. Future live streams. I have no idea what I will be doing next Saturday for my next comic book chat live stream. Eventually, I'm going to work up to the Marvel X-Men Avengers Infinity Gauntlet saga, the run of comic books telling the Infinity Gauntlet storyline. That is a pretty hefty task. I'm still thinking about how to outline that because, of course, there are numerous differences between the Infinity Gauntlet comic books and what the MCU gave us and their Avengers movies like Infinity Gauntlet and then Endgame and whatnot. Yeah, there's a great many differences, and trying to uh, outline those differences, that's going to be interesting. And then beyond that, I've got a number of comic book topics I'll probably touch on later. Interesting thing to note is those of you who have kept up with my comic book live streams on Saturday afternoons, you probably noticed a trend in the comic books I've discussed, all of them being old books like 20 years ago or 30 years back. Um, that's because honestly, I have not purchased a new comic book. I can't remember the last time I purchased a new comic book. It might have been in the early 2000s, 20 some odd years ago, maybe 15 years ago. That's as far back or as far recent as I've purchased. And then it might have been an oddball title like ElfQuest, a non superhero title. So, ElfQuest is another interesting book. I'm going to work into a future comic book live stream because there are a lot of neat things to discuss about ElfQuest. The creators, Wendy Penny and her husband, Richard Penny, they were kind of pioneers for self publishing their own characters. Long before there was like a Indiegogo or anything like that, where comic book artists and creators wanted to crowd fund their comics, Wendy and Richard Penny were doing just that way back when. So that's going to be an interesting topic to discuss on a future live stream. Let's see. Normally, I do Monday evenings and Wednesday evening live streams where I talk about anything pop culture related, movies, TV shows, books, what have you. And then I'm a co-host on Comic Relief Crusaders live streams. Quite enjoyable. So those are the spots where you can find me, here on my channel and then elsewhere. This has been a fun Saturday afternoon. Still a lot of day left for everyone to get out and enjoy the rest of their Saturday. I want to thank you all for joining me today. Again, thank you, Tina and Lemon Pie, and anybody else who's lurking out there checking me out. Thank you. I do appreciate it. So until later, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Until next time, everyone. Bye.